Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Jerry Garcia Licks from 1981, and I've had some requests to feature this late, great, legendary musician and the godfather of the jam band scene, for sure. And Jerry's career started around 1960 and continued until his passing in 1995. And he was very prolific, with the Dead and his various solo projects and guest appearances out there. And it's really interesting because Jerry mixed rock with blues and jazz and country and bluegrass and R&B and funk and all these different styles of music. And you never really knew what he was going to do until he did it, because he was a pure improviser and he really did play for the moment. He never really repeated himself, just depending on the gig and where he was and how he was feeling. He would react to the crowd, he would react to his band. He was a very pure improviser, I guess you could say, and a total legend of the guitar, Captain Trips. So I have to admit, I'm not really a Deadhead, and I really didn't latch on and appreciate the Grateful Dead's music until I caught Jazz is Dead, the Blue Light Rain album with Jimmy Herring at the helm. That was in 1998. When I heard this album, it blew my doors off, and it's mostly Grateful Dead covers, and I didn't realize that when I heard it, and then I started checking it out and really paying attention. It's like, oh wait, these are Dead songs. And Red Baron, from Billy Cobham's Spectrum albums on here too. A classic, kind of overlooked album from the late 90s. Jazz is Dead actually released, 3 albums, and I have all those on CD. This album will melt your face off and probably help you appreciate the Grateful Dead's music. So the licks in this lesson actually came from a live TV appearance in 1981 that was broadcast in Germany, and it went on for over 2 hours. And I just sat here and just kind of watched the entire thing. And anytime Jerry played a solo and something stood out, I grabbed it. And I had way too many licks for a typical 3 for All episode. Usually I include 3 licks and 1 bonus lick. We're going to go over that quota, in this episode. There's a lot of Jerry Garcia here. But trust me, I had a dozen licks, and I had to start kicking some off the list. Because definitely, when Jerry was feeling it and inspired and kind of flowing, it was really great. And then you could catch, where he was just kind of fumbling around trying to figure out, all right, there's where I'm going. And he would kind of march off in a different direction right in the same solo. Really interesting, and it's just a really different approach to playing music and reacting to music and improvising and everything. Really cool stuff, and there's some tasty licks in this episode, so here we go. All right, the first lick's this Emotive blues phrasing, and this is played over a B-flat 7 chord. So in B-flat, it's like this. One more time. So nothing really hard here. All these licks are pretty, easy to grab. It's just the way he kind of put them together, the phrasing, the dynamics, with picking and fretting things. And definitely Jerry moved things around as far as the balance. Sometimes he would aggressively play things, sometimes he would really lighten up and play really soft and quiet, and then maybe get louder or whatever. So dynamics are really important here. And for this, just think of this position of B-flat minor pentatonic. And he's grabbing, basically this D-flat. Like that. And I find myself grabbing that bend out of that position of a minor pentatonic a lot. One of my favorite licks is right there. Right? Just you're basically grabbing those 3 notes and kind of smear bending that D-flat. And when I saw, what Jerry did, I was like, hey, I kind of play licks like that, even though I didn't learn it from Jerry Garcia, but this one I did. So you got that, and it's played kind of light, he just kind of emphasizes certain notes or accents certain notes, but it's real light and kind of quiet. And kind of slide off at the end. One more time. Okay, next up's a bluesy position shifting lick, and this is over A. So think A minor pentatonic, the same pentatonic position that we played in the B flat lick with lick 1, but just moved down a half step, and now we're in A right there, and he's doing. One more time. So nothing really hard to play once again. Pretty basic lick. It's just kind of showing you like some Jerry Garcia phrasing there. Like the same bend, but now we're in A. And then you're going to end up on that A note right there on the G string. And then... And you're really just finding a way to kind of move back to grab that lower A right there. It's kind of like an A minor blues, because you're coming down right there, and there's your flat 5, that E flat. And then shift slide back to that C and end on that A right there. So it's setting you up for that final, you know, root note. Like that. You know, tight, expressive, you know, position shifting, bluesy pentatonic phrase. Okay, next up is this blurry legato kind of pivot arpeggio idea, and the chords behind this, it's moving from B to E, you know, as far as the chords behind this lick, and you distinctly hear Jerry do this. One more time. So it's not really that hard to play, and it's kind of busy and almost shreddy, you know, for Jerry Garcia. And I've learned, you know, pivot arpeggio like licks like that before. Actually, I wrote a lesson about those for Guitar Player magazine, you know, several years ago. But I learned those from Steve Vai and Nuno Betancourt in more of the shreddy rock, you know, kind of approach. And I learned those on the high E and the B. And then here, you know, Jerry's doing this. On the G and the B string right there. So grab that E note back to that D sharp, that C sharp to B, and there's your 4 notes. And you're really just kind of doing this repeated, like pivot kind of idea. Like that. And you're gonna start with that E and D sharp with some vibrato, you know, kind of spelled out. And then you start that lick. And then I just kind of ended up there on that F sharp. Of course, Jerry kept going. That was just a little moment during his solo there. But interesting lick, and when I heard it and I saw it, I was like, hey, I've played licks like that since I was a kid. Just, you know, I didn't learn it from Jerry Garcia, but there it is. And it's kind of hard to grab those licks with just a little bit of, you know, slight overdrive, you know, not heavily distorted, because it's really easy if you got like a shred tone. But with more of kind of like a cleaner, like slightly distorted rock tone, those licks are kind of hard to grab. Because you can't really hide behind all this distortion and stuff. You really have to pull that lick out just using your fingers and that kind of slightly overdriven tone. That's tough. Here's a bonus lick, and this is one of Jerry's signature Mu-Tron, auto-wah, kind of funky licks from the song Shakedown Street. And the chords behind this, it's moving from G to C, and then ends up in D minor. And it's something like this. Right, one more time. Something like that. It's really hard to grab with that effect too. I tried to dial in something with my Kemper Profiler player, and I just added an auto-wah, which is close. It's not exact or anything. But think, you know, D minor pentatonic right there. And that's that first little phrase, real simple. And then he starts doing this. So he's grabbing this B flat, he bends that up, grabs that D, and then he picks that B flat and releases the bend. But you don't want to let it ring together, you don't want to separate, right? So he's doing this. So after that, you're going to end up on that C. And then right there, slide that D into E, catch that C again, and then there's a really crafty trill right there. You know, basically moving between that B flat and that B. Like that's kind of how he ends it. And then, like that, and you kind of see him slide up there like that, and then he grabs that trill right there between that B flat and B, you know, with his middle and third finger. I always like that weird, bubbly Mu-Tron effect too, and there you can hear and see Jerry using it right here. Okay, I swear I can count to 3, and I've already included 4 licks in this lesson, so here's lick number 5, so a bonus lick, I guess. I don't know. But I didn't want to exclude this. I wanted to include it because it's cool, and that's why I'm keeping it in here. But this is over A, and Jerry was doing... One more time. So this kind of tight, like bluesy, kind of blurry phrasing in there. And he's basically playing with A minor pentatonic, but he's also adding that major third. So you can definitely hear that in there. So he's doing this. So he's starting with that D note bent to E and releases it and then grabs that C sharp. Grabs that A and then grabs the high A right there, an octave higher. So right off the bat, it's really interesting, like, whoa, what was that? And then do that again. And then right there, you're gonna do a minor to major, like that C to C sharp. And that's really unusual because you're going from minor to major, grabbing that E, and then E flat to that D. Hop over to that A. So he's doing a lot in just a small amount of space. You know, it's something like that, kind of slow. One more time, real slow. So it definitely has a flow to it. You just have to get in there and kind of figure it out, and then you start, you know, picking up the pace, and you can hear how it fits. Because it has like this bouncy, melodic kind of feel to it. And that just sings over like an A7 chord or whatever, right? Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of 3 for All with this look at 3 Jerry Garcia licks from 1981. Definitely an iconic and pioneering, you know, legend of music and the guitar. I mean, Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead taught the entire world how to jam in a jam band, literally. And very important, you know, for sure. His legacy, I don't know if it will ever go away. And, you know, it was 30 years ago that Jerry passed away. He passed away in 1995. Now it's 2025. So 3 decades later, I still catch people talking about the Grateful Dead, talking about Jerry's guitar playing and style. And like I said, I don't know if that legacy will ever be tarnished or go away. And I actually saw The Dead back in 2003. That was the Grateful Dead with Jimmy Herring on board. I had to go to that concert. I was already obsessed with Jimmy and those Jazz is Dead albums. And Jimmy Herring with the Grateful Dead, let me tell you, during, you know, the Dead concert, I was completely blown away. It was like, wow, this sounds so good. And of course, I'm a big Jimmy Herring fan, but he helped me open that Grateful Dead door, which I kind of ignored until I noticed Jimmy Herring, you know, playing it. And then I kind of peeked behind the door, and then I kind of kicked that door open and walked in. And so I'm still not really, I wouldn't consider myself a Deadhead, but I do respect and appreciate this music for sure. And I am going to put together a chord play for the Grateful Dead. We can look at Bob Weir and Jerry Garcia's output, you know, chord-wise as far as rhythm stuff. But very interesting and different and inspiring music, which is legendary for sure. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.